All right. So, like I said, we're talking about modular synths, and I just want to get into it so we can get going with this stuff today. And there's if you go on YouTube and if you've never really done much research about modular synths or kind of like really messed around with modular synths, if you just go on YouTube, you just type in modular synthesizer. You're going to see there's a lot of really cool videos about this. This one from Andrew Hong is really good. And, he's got a lot of good videos. And this guy's got tons and tons of videos about everything. So you can definitely, he's a good person to follow along with this stuff. But it's, modular synths are very, very cool. It's definitely worth diving into. Just be aware. It's going to be a very, it's going to be a very expensive hole to fall into if you fall into modular synthesis. These things all cost lots and lots of money. Like this Moog System 55. Let's see if they even have. Let's see if they even sell it. Oh, that's on here. Wait, can we? Just an example. If you go to someplace like Sweetwater.com and you go in here and you go for modular synth, you'll start to see how much these things cost. So these ones here are, this is like a hybrid modular synth. It's got like it's what they call semi-modular, and oh cool. In Mod 1, Kia used to show us his music theory videos with modular synths. That's awesome. So you see the prices on these things, how much these things can cost. For like a full setup with everything in it, you're looking at around $4,000, $3,000, something like that. You can see prices in here. This is like it's like a whole bunch of stuff, like a system. System here, there's this one over here, system. A system is like everything in it. But modular synths, what's really cool about modular synths is that you can build them like one piece at a time with these modules. And the modules are like one piece of the puzzle. If you remember yesterday, we talked about the different parts, like the oscillator, the filter, the amplifier. We talked about the envelopes and the LFOs. Those 5 parts are the basic building blocks of a synthesizer. And with a modular synth, you can actually buy those 5 blocks independently from one another and create your own modular synthesizer, your own synth from scratch. You can also get into like one of these like systems that's already set up for you. Like I said, they start at around $3,000 or $4,000 and kind of go up from there. But like Sweetwater's not the best place to go for it because they just don't have that much stuff. But if we type in Eurorack, let's see, Eurorack, which is a type of modular synth. So here, let's see here. Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot more if we go into here. So this is like, there's like a whole bunch of pieces to this puzzle, which we're going to come back and kind of talk about here a little bit more detail. I just want to kind of give you an overview and show you just like what's going on. Like there's Eurorack modules, there's cases, accessories, synthesizers, stuff like that. And in here, okay, so they have 480 products, which is really awesome. There's lots and lots of stuff in here. They range everywhere from, here's a ring modulator noise thing from Behringer that's $79. They go up to like several hundreds of dollars. Here's one that's $579. So this is this is like the prices that we're kind of looking at here with this stuff here, and they don't really go above that. But as you can see, if you're spending $500, $600 on one module, and you have several modules, that's how you can see that things get really expensive really quickly. So as always, I mean, like, modular synths are super, super cool. They get very expensive, and just be aware of that going into it. So, but if you just type in modular synthesizer, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff in YouTube. Lots and lots of really great stuff. And then in the Canvas, if we go over here to Canvas, and when we look in Canvas, you can see I've actually got a couple videos in here that will kind of set you on your path for this stuff over here. Down here, if we go to online resources, super basic modular synth explanation. So this is going to open this up in YouTube. Right, here's this one here. This is a good one. And then there's also this one, which is talking about Junkie XL explains modular. That's very loud. Modular synthesis, which is, this is a really good one as well. And then this one here, when I made those links, this one from Andrew Huang was not up yet. So modular synthesis explained should be a good one as well. Check it out and then decide if we want to put it in there. But there's some really cool stuff out there about modular synths. You just need to go looking for it. And I would recommend going looking for it because it's really interesting stuff and it definitely will help you understand other types of synthesizers. I couldn't really wrap my head around synthesizers much until I actually bought a kind of digital modular synth. The one I got was the Nord Modular, which looks like this. It just looks like a keyboard thing, like this. There it is. And it has just 18 knobs on it. It's got some data stuff over here and just a few keys. What was really great about this one here was that it connected up to your computer. And let's do a search, Nord Modular software. So you can see what the software looks like. And this is the software. And it had software that would open up on your computer and you actually could see the kind of what was going on inside of the synthesizer. So it looked like this and you could create modules and create your own kind of digital modular synth. And it was like really the first thing that allowed you to do this kind of easily. Reactor was already a thing by this point, and Reactor could kind of let you do it, but Reactor was a lot more more difficult to use. Satori says, does the price vary because of the components used in each module and the kind of options each provide, like a sequencer and little drum machine? Yes, the price varies depending on a bunch of things. The price varies depending on like the work that went into it, like how crazy it is. Maybe there's like a certain filter that's like a really sought after type of filter. Maybe there's a whole computer chip in there. One of the misconceptions is that modular synth equals analog. That's not true. Modules, the individual module components can be digital. So some of these modules, like over here at Sweetwater, some of these modules, actually probably these days, most of the modules are not actually analog anymore. They're like digital. Let's see, what's a good... So probably this one here, Electromusic Panharmonium Eurorack mutating spectral here. This one's definitely digital. This make noise mask complex function generator, this is definitely digital, and they fall into different categories, which we're gonna talk about a little bit later. So here's like a sequencer. It looks like a digital sequence. Well, it looks like a kind of combination digital analog. Maybe it's an analog sequencer actually. There's different types of modules that do different things, which we're going to cover here. So the ones that are more kind of complex are probably going to be more expensive, but not necessarily. There are some that are probably expensive that just sound really good, or they have a really good sound, or like something like that. So it's really case by case by what makes them expensive. It's not something that you can just be like, oh, it's only this, so it's going to be super cheap. That's not necessarily the case. But it wasn't until I got this thing here that I really started to understand synthesis. I did have, so my kind of coming up through all this was I got my first keyboard in the early 90s, like 1990 or 1991, and it was a Korg T3, which was a relative of the M1. The M1 is a very famous keyboard from Korg, and if we look, Korg T3 looks like this. This is what it looked like. Bam. Yeah, that's what it looked like right there. And the thing that was cool about this is what we call a music workstation. And the workstation was combining three elements of these synthesizers. What it was combining a keyboard controller. Remember we talked about this, you need a keyboard controller. It was combining a sound engine, the module, the sound module. And then it was combining a sequencer. And a sequencer is like what Ableton Live is. Ableton Live is basically a sequencer. Ableton Live is a music workstation. It's a audio workstation, which means it actually can record audio, it can sequence, and it can play audio, lets you edit audio, stuff like that. But back in the day, this is like 1991, like I said, or 1990. Back in the day, a sequencer. Let's see if I can find a picture of it. Notator Pro. Let's see, there's a picture of it. Yeah, this is what it looked like. Yep. This is actually on an Atari. Well, hey, let's find a better picture. Maybe this one's better. No, it's not better. You get the idea. This is like what it looked like. It was like this. Oh, here we go. So, and it was actually Logic. So this is what it looked like back then, and this is what it looks like today. And everything was black and white. It was actually on I don't know what computer they're showing it on right here, but we could access it on an Atari ST. I used a program that was similar to this. I don't remember the name now, but it was on a Macintosh computer. And I did eventually use that, but a sequencer, all it did was do MIDI stuff. It didn't have audio or anything like that. You didn't have software synthesizers in it, nothing like that. Because, MIDI is very, very lightweight, so you can use this to kind of control things. And you had 16 channels here. Each one had a MIDI channel, and then you could just play instruments like that. This Korg T3 had 8 different instruments that could play at the same time. And it had, 28 notes of polyphony, something like that. Not that much. And you could edit the sounds in here. And Korg was kind of famous for some piano sounds, dance sounds, organs, and stuff like that. Some of the drum sounds were kind of famous as well. But the reason why it really became famous, the M1, the one it looks exactly like this. It was just the previous version. The reason why the M1 became so famous was because for like $2,000, you could do all your MIDI, all your music yourself. You could have drums, you could have a bass, you could have strings, and it was really the first thing to do that. And you didn't have to have it connected to a computer. You could just use it on its own. It was very hard to let me actually show you what the screen looked like. Korg M1 sequencer. Let's see what that looked like here. If there's a picture of it. Oh, wow. There's a little, that's so funny. Oh, Nintendo, that's so funny. That's hilarious. The sequencer on board looked like, well, this is what the screen looked like right here. You can see it right there. Let's see. Is there a picture of it? Does anybody have a good picture of the sequencer? Well, this is... this is the i3. This is the modern version of it. It was like a little screen like this. So it wasn't very much, like there wasn't a lot of screen real estate, and it was very clunky. And you be thankful that you don't have to use one, is all I'm trying to say. I'm trying to give you an example of how thankful you should be, but I can't really find anything that shows you that. But you're just diving through menus and stuff like that, and kind of diving deep into it. So you couldn't do a whole lot with it. Compared to today. So in there, like editing stuff in there, like learning about envelopes, learning about filters and things like that was really tricky. It was really difficult to get into that. And so I had that for years and years and years. And then I got some drum machines and I got some samplers, and there was filters in there, and there was like some stuff like that. But I didn't, I understood what a filter did kind of, but I didn't understand how the envelopes connected to the filters. I didn't really understand how the LFOs worked. That was really tough to understand until I got the Nord Modular. And with the Nord Modular, I bought the Nord Modular. I got some big books about synthesis, and I dove in really hard. And then finally I understood that. And that was 10 years, 9 years after I started doing all this stuff. I didn't get the Nord Modular until about 9 years later. The other problem that I kind of ran into was that I wasn't in a space where there were like that many people to kind of help me out with this stuff. I was mostly like kind of doing this on my own, and I didn't have a lot of friends who were deep into it. This is pre-internet, pre like popular internet, so it was really hard to meet people who were doing this stuff. And I'm like kind of a little bit of a like an introvert anyway when it comes to learning about stuff. So it took a while, but um, once I got this thing here and I could see it in front of me and I could connect the dots, I was like, oh my gosh, that's super, super cool. I would, I'd love to get deeper into that. So that's what happened. Now, of course, we have the internet and YouTube videos and all that stuff, so it's a lot easier to learn about how all this stuff works. And the other super cool thing is that we also have great software that is free that you can use for free. So let's go ahead and start there. What we're going to do is if you go to nativeinstruments.com, you go in here to Native Instruments. And we're going to go in here to products. You can see they've got the Machine MK3 Super Silver thing. It's really cool. This actually, for a controller, the Machine is super, super awesome. It's a great piece to have in the studio. You can use it for all sorts of really cool stuff. And if you really get into it, you can actually program the Machine to do all sorts of really neat things. There's also a Machine Plus over here, which is cool. I would highly recommend checking out these. The Machine Plus is cool because it stands alone. You don't have to use it with the computer. I don't know if it's worth it for you or not, but super dope. The Machine MK3, you need to use it with the computer, but it's great as a controller. Anyway, so here's let's go in here to products, and let's go to complete. Actually, you know what? It might be easier if you just do, here we go, complete start. If you click on overview, if you go to products, click on overview and go down here to complete start and click on this. This is free. And what's super cool about this is it has everything you need to get going. It has a whole bunch of stuff. It's got, where is this? Does it talk about, let's see here, what you need to install it all the way down at the bottom. How much is, what is the down? It doesn't tell you. Specifications, here we go. So the specifications are, you need 7 gigabytes for the complete installation. You need a Core i5 or more. It just tells you the computer. Basically, if you're running a newer computer, you should be fine with that. 4 gigs of RAM minimum, but if you're running like Pro Tools, Ableton Live, something like that, you definitely would want more gigs of RAM. But you can see it's not super huge, but it's nice for free. 7 gigs is really good. And what it comes with, what is up, Dempsey? How you doing? Dempsey, please stick around for Zoom. We need to talk. All right, so in here it comes with some synthesizers, microprism, laser bass, carbon, space drone, new school, blocks, bass. This is what we're going to be kind of working with today. And so download and install this, and if you have troubles with it getting it going, then we'll talk about it. It comes with some play series selection, kinetic treats, which is really cool, some expansion stuff from the Machine library, world, band, synth, some things like that, and then some effects, supercharger, and Guitar Rig 6 player. And it also comes with complete control, Contact 6 player, and Reactor 6 player. Oh, what's up, Carlos? How you doing? So it comes with some nice stuff. Most everything works inside of Contact 6 player and Reactor 6 player. This is basically how Native Instruments stuff works these days. So when you first open up Native Instruments, anything from Native Instruments, you're not going to see all of these synthesizers in your plugins. You're going to see just a couple of synthesizers in your plugins, and you're going to go into those, and then you're going to open those and get to all the other things. And we're going to talk about that today, and we're going to go into it in more detail tomorrow. So tomorrow we're really going to dive deep into Reactor and Contact and stuff like that, and all the synths that come with it. But today we're just going to focus on the blocks. So the blocks bass is what we're really going to be focused on. And like I said, this is super awesome because it's free. It's not like a demo that it times out after a while. It doesn't like have any kind of thing where you can't save it or something like that. It's free, like totally free. And these are things that you can make some really great sounds with. You can make some really cool music with them. It is limiting because there's only a few of them, but it's still free and you can still do some really cool stuff. And even with the block space, if you really dive into this, if you get into this modular synth stuff, you can actually do a lot with it to really make your own cool sounds and stuff like that. So we're gonna get into and talk about that. So definitely download this and start that installation process while I'm talking about everything else. We're gonna talk a little bit about the history of modular synthesizers, and we're gonna talk a little bit about what modular synthesizers have looked at throughout the years. I'm gonna use Arturia's synths to do that. And then a little bit later on, we're going to talk about diving into the reactor blocks and connecting the dots where you can do it for free. So in the meantime, while you're downloading and installing that stuff, let's talk a little bit about the history of things. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the Moog module. I'm going to use audio units because it's just easy to find them with Arturia stuff in here. So in here, there's a couple of synthesizers in here that are modular synthesizers. The first one we're going to talk about is the Modular V3, and this is based on Moog's modular synth, the big famous one, and they look like this. So this is a great kind of thing to show here what they look like. And if I go in here, just out of the box, it sounds like this. Let me turn up my volume on my headphones a little bit. There we go. But let's go ahead and start with a preset that's a better preset. That's not a great preset because it's like, whoops. It's like everything all at once. They changed everything here. Hold on, let's see. Templates, here we go. So I'm gonna go down to the templates, and we're gonna go to one oscillator, one filter, like this. Let's click on this, close this. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at okay, so this is, the cool thing about this is because it's software, you can pull up presets automatically that have all the cables connected for you. In real life, you would need to connect the dots yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at what this looks like in real life, although it looks like that. But let's go to YouTube, and here's the Moog system here. You can see how big it is. This is basically what we're talking about here, and this is like what it looks like. This one here, I don't even know if they still sell it. They probably do not still sell it. Moog synthesizers tend to be pretty expensive. Yeah, they don't sell it anymore. When they did sell it, it cost, I want to say $30,000, something like that. I think it was like around $30,000 when they did sell it. And you can see here's the Moog 1 16 voice polyphonic, which is $8,500. But they have other cheaper ones. The subsequent 37, oh, $1,600. Wow, that price is going up. It used to be like $1,400 or something like that. I feel like it was a little bit cheaper. The Moog Grandmother, yeah, these prices are all going up. Interesting. This is $999. They got the Subharmonicon, the Moog Matriarch 2000. That's expensive. What else is down? Oh, the Grandmother Dark. Okay, that's the same. I thought they were making a cheaper one now. Maybe it's this one I'm thinking of here. I thought they were coming out with like a cheaper one, but maybe not. These are really cool. These are not really modular. Some of these are semi-modular, but they could, like this one here would have been very, very expensive. And what's cool about this is you could buy it as a package, which comes with all the bits and pieces, but you also have these spaces to put new modules in here. So you can see I can click on here and I can put new modules in here. And there's more modules over here. And some of these modules are oscillators, some of them are filters, and some of them are envelopes. And there's another module which we haven't really spoken about down here. That is a sequencer. There's a sequencer module down here. There's also a filter bank, some delays, chorus, stuff like that. The way you do this is you have to physically make these connections. So if I go back over here, well, let me just quit this one. There we go. If I go back over here to this, you can see he's standing in front of it and there's cables where he's actually plugging the cables in. I'm not going to play the video. I'm just going to like kind of show you stuff. And so he's actually plugging cables into things. Oh, there's also a VCV rack. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, you can see he's plugging cables in to here. Yeah, and thank you for reminding me, Barb. I don't actually use VCV rack because I just don't. I just put your name in there. Oh, that's funny. VCV rack. There we go. Here we go. So this one here is a rack simulator. There we go. And this is free as well. It's a free download. You can buy individual parts for it and stuff like that. So it's also very cool. I just prefer to use the reactor blocks just because reactor goes a little bit further with stuff. But yeah, thank you for reminding me about this. It's very, very cool, and it's come a long way. Actually, I should probably maybe kind of check it out again because it's been a couple of years since I've really checked it out. I think they did some great updates to it not that long ago and changed things. It looks a little bit different from how I remember it. But you could do some really, really cool stuff to it. And you can. One of the cool things is because it is software, you can actually save your settings and stuff like that, which is a big difference between hardware racks, hardware modular synths, is you can't really save your settings. But hardware, you can touch the knobs, you can go in and you can actually, it's physical, so it has a very different vibe to it. All right, so anyway, with each one of these, there's different cables that you have to connect together. So you can see over here, I can grab the cable. So let's just go down here and take a look at what's happening here. So if we zoom into this, we can see here's an oscillator right here. And what you need to do when you start working with these is you need to find your oscillators for these first of all. And the oscillators are this, there's a bank of oscillators down here. And if I just go over here, we can see there's oscillators over here. There's a whole bunch of oscillators in here. And I can connect up these oscillators to the output. And down here is like kind of a mixer thing. So I have to go from my output here to an input, to an output, to an input, to an output, to an input. And that's how we make this connection. Here, let's just take a look at the notes over here. Okay, so remember, every part of a modular synth must be connected. You've got an oscillator that goes into a filter, goes into an amp. It's the same thing as our synthesizers that we spoke about yesterday. It's just, we just have to do it ourselves. You must also connect some kind of controller like a keyboard for pitch and gate. The gate is your note on or off messages. So in here, if we go in here, I'm going to connect my oscillator. And I got to connect one of my outputs here of my oscillator. There's a sine wave, there's a triangle wave, a sawtooth wave, and a square wave. Goes down here to the input here. And then this input has like a mixer. I can mix between these different things. And down here, oops, come down here, there's the output. And I can control the volume here. I can turn the volume down. I can turn the volume up right over here. That's my volume. And this one here is the output is connected up here. If we follow the cable up, the output is connected to my input on my low pass filter. And I can control this right here. Also, it's got a resonance. You can pull the resonance down like that. Right, and then we can see the output here is going over here. The output, if we follow it down, it comes over here to our VCA in, which is our envelope. The envelope is right here, and that goes to our output down here. Now, you'll notice that this is not actually connected to anything. It's just here hanging out. So it's a little bit different than what we talked about yesterday. This is actually going into our amplifier, and then the amplifier is just going out to our speakers. So if we plug into our VCA in, that's going to go out to our speakers, and this is where we can control our envelope here. So I can make this a little bit different. This. So I can turn on my sustain. You can see everything is basically the same as what we looked at yesterday. It's just things are in like a little bit of a different order. It says attack, decay, release, and then sustain. They did that because these first three are time things. So we can change the sound right here, doing stuff like this, and just adjust this so it doesn't pop or click. Cool, awesome. But I can use this envelope to control other stuff as well, which would be my output right here. So I can use the envelope for the amplifier, which is if I plug into the VCA in, or I can use it for other stuff here. So there's different things you can do with it. There's also other stuff you can do down here where we trigger things with the sequencer, stuff like that. I don't really ever program on this one very much. I use other synths to program stuff. So I'm not super great with this. I guess this is sequencer column 1, 2, 3, 4 is our output for that, I think. And we can use that to control stuff. So we can take a look at that and see what goes on with that. But I don't really use this one too much other than grabbing some presets and then tweaking them, which is, we're going to go through like what to look for with that. We also over here it says mod in, and this mod in is so we can use something to modulate this filter right here. So we can see the mod in is coming from over here, an LFO. This LFO is controlling our mod in. And this is something that's very different on here as opposed to the real hardware machine, is it's got this little thing here, and you can click on this and drag it up. That's going to show how much modulation it's going to do. So I can go over here. So you can hear how it's modulating my filter here, and I can change my frequency. Like that. And my amount is right here. Right? And so that's how we can set that stuff up there. So that's what we can do. Now, if I wanted to add another oscillator into here, let's check this out. Let's see, we're getting... Turn that amount down here. And let's just go down here to another oscillator. Let's just plug this one in here. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say, okay, I would like to use a square wave. So I'm going to use my square wave here. I'm going to click on it. And you can see once I click and hold down, it shows me everywhere that I can plug this thing in. So I'm going to click it right here, drop it right there. So now, let's click on maybe the click. Let's see. And this is where I always get lost because I never remember how to actually get these. What's my mixer situation? This is where I always get lost about stuff. It's super annoying for me. Huh. Oh, there we go. Okay. I just click on this button here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my frequency here. Or at least I should be able to. Let's see. No, that was not the right button. Oh, it was just on and not on at the same time. That's weird. That's like a glitch or something. Okay, let's turn this down. There we go. Like, it's on, so it should have just, like, we should have just heard it, but whatever. Okay, so we have these here, and I've got my frequency here. So we can hear that. I can put this up in semitones. And I can adjust the level. Right there. Okay. So it's pretty cool. Like, you can just add stuff in and say, okay, I want to add something in here. I can change the frequency of stuff. If you leave it set here, actually this is not true. Let's put that back up to 0. Yeah, there's like weird little things going on with this thing, and I think it might be because I'm running on an M1 Mac computer. So in here, now we can say, okay, that's cool. If I wanted to run it through its own filter or something like that, I could do that. You can turn off the link so we can't hear it anymore, and then I could run this output here up into another filter, into this other envelope or something like that. Or I could run everything into different filters and run it back into here. I could run the oscillator straight up into the filter and then down to the mixer. There's all sorts of different ways you can do it, and they all have different results. And I want to talk about that more when we get into using Reactor and just talk about all the different things you can do. But there's a lot of really cool stuff we can do. And then we could also use the we can use different things to trigger like how it's working. Like you can see here's the keyboard one is controlling my pitch, stuff like that. We could have a filter, or an LFO rather, go into, let's get a, can we get another LFO over here? LFO. Where's my, oh, interesting. Can we only use one LFO? Interesting. Okay. I'm going to change this to sample and hold. And I might need to set up the sequencer with this. I might be kind of getting out of my, like, more than what I can actually handle right now. Because I seriously do not program on this thing at all. I always look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to something I know how to use. So I wanted to do like a cool little pitchy thing for you, but I just realized I'm not sure I know how to do it. Let's try this here. Let's go over here, and I can connect this into my oscillator 1. What's that coming from? It's coming from, oh, I see what's going on. Okay, here. Let's change this. And grab, I'm just going to drag that away. I'm going to grab this and go into here. Here we go. So now, if I push this up, let's see here. Is that going to do anything? Just trying to get it to do some. Yeah, I'm not sure. This number 2, how to get that to actually work here. There we go. Yeah, it's only kind of going back and forth. Yeah, I mean, like, you really need to kind of get in. You really need to know what you're doing more than I do with this. So let's move on to some other stuff. Just kind of showing you these things, but you can see, like, there's a lot you can do with this, and you've got sequencers in here. I know how to use reactor blocks a lot better, I promise. You can, there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's really complex, which is why I've never actually sat down and learned how to use it very well. But if you do learn how to use it, if you get in here and you really are interested in it, you can make a lot of really cool things, and you can just click through, like, here's some presets. So you can do stuff like that. All these things in here. Stuff like this. And in here, once you get in here, you can kind of look and see how things are connected up. So once I get some presets going on, I can look and see, okay, these are connected up. They're going into this filter here. And I know what to change. I can change that there. If I want my modulation to do less. Let's see. There we go. And it's got like a delay going on it, so I'm going to go down here to my delay. Let's turn down the wet. There we go. I can turn that up. I can control things in here. stuff like that. So you can really change the sound up here. So what's really cool about this is you don't really need to know how to program so much yourself, like as in my case, I don't know how to program this stuff from scratch because it is software. I can actually go in and just tweak stuff, which is I think what most people kind of do. They kind of find some preset and they tweak it. But the cool thing is that if you wanted to learn how to program from scratch, you could open up one of these and then recreate it and see how things are working. Like go through on, open up another one and then have them open like on two different monitors or whatever, and then recreate one program from the other and then really see how things are working. Now we can see they're using two low-pass filters here. And you can see what they're doing here. That's cool. Yeah, that's neat. Like, there's some really cool programs in here. So, as you can hear, you can do some really, really complex stuff with it. Now, a little bit of the history here is that this was made by a guy named Bob Moog, and in the 60s, I guess. And he started making electronic instruments back in the 50s with the theremin. And he decided that he wanted to make instruments for musicians, people who already could play keyboards or musical instruments. And so from the very beginning, his synthesizers that he made had a keyboard that you could play from. So if you were a piano player and you wanted to learn how to use this, you could either learn how to program it yourself, or you could work with somebody who knows how to program it, and then you could make all the sounds and you could play stuff. Now, not that many people were amazing at programming this. There were a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, not a lot. Because they're complicated to learn how to use and they take a certain amount of patience. But some really amazing people here. Like, there's a legacy of awesome stuff. If we go into YouTube, you can do a search for Wendy Carlos. And Switched on Bach is the real famous one. Really cool stuff. If you've ever seen the movie Tron, Wendy Carlos did the music for Tron. Let's see, Switched on Bach, full album. This one is super cool. You should definitely check it out. Some really neat stuff that you can hear on here if they're up. I know that the Switched on Bach stuff is kind of hard to come by for copyright reasons. But also Clockwork Orange, if you've seen that movie Clockwork Orange, that's all. A lot of it is using Moog synthesizers, and it's all Wendy Carlos using Moog synthesizers to play this stuff. So it's really, really cool. Another really awesome person to check out is Tomita. And I'm a big fan of, all these are super, super cool. I'm not going to play them so that I don't have any problems with copyright issues. But definitely check this stuff out. Tomita stuff is great. I really like the planets, especially the very first one is really cool. But there's a lot of really neat stuff in here that you can check out. Like, you should definitely check this stuff out. Like, go listen to it. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's a Tron soundtrack, Tron 1, Tron 2. Also, Stranger Things. They use a lot of analog synthesizers for Stranger Things, so that's where all these sounds kind of come from. If you've heard them, you're like, wow, where did those sounds come from? It's all analog synthesizers like this, and these big giant ones, sequencers and stuff like that. Not all of them are the big giant ones, but they all have this vibe. So that was what was happening on the East Coast, that Moog was making instruments for musicians, so people could just sit down and play it. And that's one of the reasons why his synthesizers became so famous. Also, they sound amazing. They work really well. Lots of cool modules that you could get for them. So it was also very accessible. There was another person around the same time who was starting to experiment with this stuff, and this is Buchla. And his approach was very different to the whole synthesizer thing. His approach was that synthesizers should be kind of recreating the instrument. So you shouldn't really be creating instruments that look like things that we currently have. You should be making things that are weird and different. So this one here does look a little bit like a piano. This is the electric music box from this is again Arturia. And again, I really do not know how to program this thing, but you can do some super cool stuff with it. This one here was not fully modular. This is what we would call semi-modular. So I don't think you actually need to plug in any cables into it. But let's see here. You can actually, let's go look at what one of the Buchla modular synths look like. Well, not you. Here we go. Let's go over here to this and say Buchla system modular. So in here, if we go look at the, oops, not the videos. Yeah. So if we go look at these, you can see a little bit more about what they kind of look like. Well, that's not big enough. Hold on a second. Let's see. Go back over here. Let's see. Is this one? This one's bigger? Nope. All right. Let's see if this one's any big. Okay, whatever. They're not very big, but you can see that there's no real keyboard connected to this. And the reason why there's no keyboard is because he thought it would be, more interesting to make these things that created otherworldly sounds, really crazy things, not just like being able to play it with a keyboard or a piano or something like that. So it was interesting because in the 60s, there were these two kind of schools of thought going on. One on the East Coast, which was synthesizers should be accessible and for musicians, and the other one on the West Coast, which was synthesizers should be making sounds that we've never heard before and doing things that we can't do with normal instruments. So with a Buchla synth, you couldn't just like play Bach, or you couldn't like make easy to listen to kind of music that had melodies and stuff like that, because these things were kind of generating the sound, more generative type of stuff, which opened up a whole new world of sound. But it wasn't a super easily accessible world. It wasn't nearly as easily accessible as the Moog synthesizers. So for a long time, people didn't really know Buchla's name. It definitely wasn't popular. It wasn't like well known outside of certain like academic circles and like really kind of musicians who wanted to dive deep into things. So that's why you might not be as familiar with Buchla, but the Buchla synthesizers go back just as far as the Moog synthesizers, like pretty much almost just as far. There might be like a year or two difference. I'm not sure, but they're basically the same time period. Now, one of the things here, if I play this, we can pull up get some really interesting sounds in here. I'm gonna go back to like the sequencers in here and see what. Let's see here. Can do some really neat stuff, and they have a different vibe to them. And this one doesn't have a thing like a filter on it. Doesn't say filter. It's got these like modulation oscillators and complex oscillators, and like you've got a timbre here. Timbre. Sorry, I'm saying the word wrong. Timbre. And we can push these here. When you push these, they kind of move around. So you can do some neat, really neat things in here. And you can change the speed, stuff like that. So lots of like things you can do in here. It's not nearly as complex as the other one, which is kind of good because it'd be a lot going on. But you can hear it's got like a different vibe. It's got like a different kind of reverb type of unit in here. Let's go over to advanced. In here, you've got this stuff here. It's like a synthesizer, left hand, right hand. Interesting. You can do some neat stuff with gravity. There's some really neat stuff in here actually. And then the effects are bypassed. And you can just hear it has a different vibe to it. Right, so we're not gonna keep going into this, but I'm just kind of showing you what different things look like in here and what they can kind of sound like. One we talked about yesterday was the ARP 2600. Again, I think this is what we would call a semi-modular. I believe you didn't, I don't remember if you needed to connect things. I think maybe you did need to connect things up actually in here. This one, what's cool about this is that you could, it came in like this, like kind of, you can see it's like a box here. So it was kind of portable. So you could, you know, it wasn't super, super big. Here, let's take a look at what they look like. And the other cool thing is with this is that you can actually buy these nowadays for just a few $100. So the ARP 2600, here's what it looked like back in the day. Not super huge. You can see there's the keyboard down here on the bottom. Here's like the case for the top part and the case for the bottom part. And it's a synth. It has a very different sound, a really cool sound that you can use. You can actually still buy these nowadays from Korg. Yep, here we go. The Korg ARP 2600. It's semi-modular, so it is semi-modular, so you don't need to have cables and stuff. And if we look at prices on these, let's see if we can go back over here to Sweetwater and see what Sweetwater has to say about the prices. The 2600. Okay, so you can get a 2600, a Behringer made 2600 for $600. You can get the limited edition for $700. There's also one made by Korg. Let's see if they still make it. I'm not sure if they still make it. 2600. Or do they still have it? It looks like they don't have it anymore. Let's see if we can see Korg 2600. Let's see. They were making it for a while, but either they don't have it anymore or they haven't actually. Oh, okay. Oh, it's not a thing yet. So it was NAMM 2021, so it's not out yet. But this is what it's going to look like. It looks like, you know, the thing. Pretty cool stuff. Sounds really good. I wonder what they're gonna cost. I have no idea. I mean, probably like in the $1,200 range, something like that. Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. So you can see people playing it, I guess. Let's see. What's the? Let's go to Synthopia. Let's see what this talks about. 2020. Okay. Oh, $4,000. Okay, so expensive, right? Yeah, cool. And I guess I don't know if it ever came out. Oh, it was sold out to distributors. Huh, that's funny. Yeah, so they didn't. That's interesting. Yeah, it was sold out before fans even knew it was on sale. Cool. Yeah, there weren't very many pieces here, so yeah. But if you're interested in something like that, you can still get a hardware unit from Behringer, which, I mean, as far as I understand, it has a good sound. I mean, it's obviously not going to be as cool and as like everything as like the Korg unit, but it is also a fraction of the cost. So you can get a similar kind of sound for a fraction of the cost. The other thing that's neat about these is they've made them Eurorack compatible, which we'll come back and talk about what Eurorack means in a little bit. So the 2600, here's what the 2600 looks like in Arturia world. And so in here, play this. You can see it's got its own little thing. It's got its own vibe to it, which is really neat. But again, if we go through, let's see, where's the filter here? The filter is right here, this VCF. F stands for filter, VC stands for voltage controlled. And this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later to really get into that. But here's our filter. It looks different. It's not a knob. It's not up and down. It's left and right. So I grab this and I move it like that. And there we go. And we can change the filter type right here. We can crank up the resonance. Okay, so you can see that. You can also see there's like a keyboard CV. You can grab CV control voltage data from different things. So if I wanted this to follow my keyboard, I could go down here to my keyboard and I could say, let's see, your keyboard out, CV. So I'm just going to move this over here and drag that and drag it up to here. There we go. And let's see how much we... I can go ahead and adjust this. Let's do it by 10. See what that does. So you can hear. Hear how that's changing the pitch? And it's changed the pitch by quite a lot, actually. So let's... And there's something else in here that's actually changing that pitch as well. Here we go. Yeah, so... So we can do all sorts of cool stuff in here as well if you know what you're doing and you kind of know like how this stuff works, which is where we're going to eventually get to. I would say learning how to do modular synthesis in something like the R2600 or the Moog Modular from Arturia would be a little bit tricky. I would say use that VCV rack would be better, or the blocks, which we're going to talk about here, because we can really start from scratch where there's nothing going on, which we're going to come back and show you here in just a second. And then finally in here, there's some other stuff like, let's see, I feel like the Matrix 12 is, no, it's not. Other stuff in here that's like modular type of stuff. Maybe not really much else that's actually modular in here. Everything else is going to be kind of fixed stuff, which is where things went after that. So the kind of history of this is after what happened was some people were touring around with their big modular synthesizers that were super huge, and they finally came to Bob Moog and said, hey, can you make it more portable? And he said, sure. And he made the Mini Moog Model D. The Mini Moog, well, eventually it became the Model D. The Mini Moog was a portable keyboard, still quite big and still heavy. Let's take a look at what the Moog Model D looks like. If they have one now, or I know Moog re-released synth. Hold on, let's see here. Let's go over here to see what it can look like. Well, let's just do for Model D. There we go. Model D. This is the famous one. There are a couple of other iterations of this, but it looks like this. Yeah, okay, here's the reissue. This is what the reissue looks like. It looks like the original version pretty much. It's a keyboard. The cool thing about it is you can unplug all the cables from the back, and this top part folds down and you can put like a case on it so you can carry it around with you. As you noticed, it doesn't have any cables or wires on it. You're fixed in the modules that you have. You cannot add more modules. What the thing is with this is that Bob Moog took the parts, some of the sections from the big modular synth, and said, okay, well, this is all I'm going to give you, and it's going to be wired a certain way internally, so you can't change anything wiring-wise, but you can still use it. It's still flexible enough so you can do some cool stuff with it, but you can't actually change the cabling inside of it. And that's what it did. Now, like a basic setup like this is just... Here's just a basic setup. It's just one oscillator going on. These are mixers here, and and I can adjust my frequency right here, and that's like a super basic thing. But you can also get into like sound effects, sequence stuff, effects. Let's see here. Where's my sound? Here we go, sound effects. And we can get some really cool sounds. Now this does have, here, let's turn off the effects. Let's turn off the chorus and the delay. I just want to make sure there's nothing else going on over here. There is some modulations things happening over here. Okay, that would not be part of it, but right, we can hear. You can do some really interesting stuff in here, especially with the software version. Even though it doesn't have cables and stuff like that, you can do some really, really neat things. I've got the Sub 37, which is kind of the modern version of this, I would say. It's kind of the modern take on it. And it's amazing what kind of sounds that thing can make, especially if you're really good at programming, which I would say I'm okay at programming it. I'm not a super, super deep expert on all the routing possibilities, but when you go through some of the presets and see what people have made online, it's pretty cool stuff. So you don't need all the cables to get some really cool sounds, and this really kind of serve the purpose of being portable and useful at the same time. This is kind of a workhorse for a long time. People could use it and play it really easily. You hear it on countless records, and then it's super, super famous. Super, super, super famous, the Model D. But we're getting away from our modular synth. So I'm going to stop right there because there's a lot more history behind this stuff. It goes really, really deep. You get into like Korg stuff, you get into Roland stuff, you get into the 80s where you've got more digital things coming in. And then what ended up happening was in the 90s, analog synthesizers kind of fell off for a while. People got obsessed with computers and things like that and what computers could do for us and digital chips and things. But eventually what happened was in the 2000s, people got unimpressed with that stuff and they started being like, you know what, we want the analog stuff again. And what was happening was that the cost of the parts was falling because technology was just becoming more and more accessible. You could get more, more chips and more tubes and things like that. All the pieces that went into these pieces of these gear. So nowadays we're back to where but we're at a point where these analog synthesizers can be really, really, they can be really, really affordable for normal humans. So a synthesizer doesn't necessarily have to cost $4,000. It can cost $500. So a student could get one, or, a hobbyist can get into it and really enjoy it. And I think that's great. Especially the Behringer stuff. I'm actually a really big fan that Behringer was able to bring the cost down on synthesizers. A lot of people really complained about it, Behringer making synthesizers so cheap, but the kind of point that Behringer was making, what I've read in interviews, was that this stuff shouldn't be cost prohibitive. It shouldn't be a secret world that nobody can get into. It should be accessible to all sorts of people. So if you go in here to like Sweetwater and you look for Behringer synthesizer, you'll find a whole bunch of things that are cost affordable. So in here we've got the Poly D polyphonic analog synthesizer. I think it's a 4-voice of polyphony, so you can play chords and stuff. But it's only $700. It looks like the Model D. You can, like you just saw on that other screen we were looking at. It's going to be pretty small. I know this thing looks like it's a little bit on the big side. It's not going to be. These are going to be mini-sized keys. And it doesn't have the same feel as a Moog synth or a Dave Smith instrument synth or some of these other synthesizers that are more expensive. It doesn't have the same feel to it, but for $700, you're getting a polyphonic 4-voice synthesizer, which is pretty darn cool. You can get down here. You can look at other ones down here. This one's like $300. A lot of them are around the $300 price range. This one here is a DeepMind. I wouldn't personally wouldn't go for that. There's other ones that I would go for first. There's this, well, I don't know what this one is, huh? VC340. Interesting. Oh, it's like a string machine. Oh, vocoder. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. $500 if you need a vocoder. That's, you know, it is what it is. The Model D, I actually owned this one. I gave it to a friend for his birthday. But this one's super cool. For $300, you're getting, it's got USB, it's got MIDI in, MIDI through, so you can use it as your MIDI interface. It's got, it's basically a Model D, Mini Moog Model D. It doesn't sound exactly like a Model D, but it sounds pretty darn close. I was really impressed with how good it stood up next to my Sub 37. So, I mean, I really enjoyed using them. One of the reasons why I got rid of it was just because I just didn't have the space for it anymore. You've got this Behringer Wasp desktop analog synthesizer. You've got this MS1 analog synthesizer with hand grip, that's funny. That's interesting. Hand grip. What is the hand grip part? I guess this thing over here. And this is going to be like probably a little, it's going to be a little, you know, like a Casio type of thing. It's going to be like a little, you know, it's going to have a certain sound to it. So my advice is check these things out. Listen to some stuff online on YouTube with people that have them, see what they sound like, and get into it. Get one, you know, because they're super cool. Here's the TD3, which is like the TB303, which is like a bass line from Roland. Only $130. This one here, TD3 TG, only $110. That's super cheap. Anybody can get into that kind of price range. So definitely there's some cool stuff. Behringer also made the drum machine. Behringer, here, let's see what drum machines. Click on this. And they have a RD9, RD6, RD6 AM, the Rhythm Designer RD8, which is an 808 type of drum machine. These are analog drum machines. They're not digital drum machines, they're analog drum machines, and they have a cool sound to them. I mean, they sound like the 808 and the 909s and stuff like that. The other thing that's really cool about this is they have individual voice out, which is super cool, because that means you can actually affect your drums individually. So your kick drum, your snare drum, when you listen to like techno, house music, stuff like that, that use the 808, the 909, you're not hearing a dry kick drum. You're not hearing a dry snare drum. You're hearing a kick drum that's been run through some distortion, some stuff like that. So we actually ended up going a little bit deeper than I kind of had planned on this stuff, but I think it's all, because it's so interesting to me, and I wanted to show you all these different things. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break here. Let's be back at 11 o'clock, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording right now.